Hi, everybody. Welcome back. You may see me more on here in the next few weeks because if there is one case which got my blood pressure up, it is the Suzanne Morphew case. Now, to make myself very clear, I do not know anyone in the Morphew family and never will, as I live in another country. I'm also not the type to fall in love with a bloke I saw on the internet, all things I have been accused of, and initially I thought it was hilarious, but eventually I became a little irritable because some of the comments were just ridiculous and dumb. But let's forget about all of that and move on. Finally, the remains of Suzanne Morphew had been found approximately a week ago, and 2 days ago or 3 days ago, the news was released that Suzanne's body was found after the necessary was done to confirm that it was indeed her body. Now, I felt like jumping on the internet immediately, but decided against it, at least until we know a little more, because, like before, there are hardly any details available at the moment, but this circus had already started. Before the Suzanne Morphew case, I had a string of true crime channels which I subscribed to. After the Suzanne Morphew case, not so many. And the reason why I unsubscribed is because some of the creators went completely nuts. And I think their beliefs and attitudes were the exact reason why the DA charged the case and the husband in particular too soon. One particular creator, an ex law enforcement or the retired detective, even went so far as to what I would call stalk Barry Morphew, driving past his home and looking through his windows and reporting on his channel that Barry walked up and down in front of the window. Anyway, it would take me far too long to list all the YouTube created transgressions. At the time, just like now, I'm not willing to bet anything I own on Barry Morphew being guilty or not being guilty. But what I do know for sure is that Barry Morphew is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And although he was arrested and did spend some time in jail and had a couple of hearings, the fact is, and the fact remains, that they could not prove him guilty, at least then. And now we do not know whether Suzanne's body or Suzanne's remains will now actually provide more evidence. We don't know that yet. But until we do, no one has the right to be as disgusting, as taunting, and laughing like a mad person saying that Barry Morphew is guilty.
She said investigators shouldn't be pointing fingers at Barry Morphew. Well, I am, because you're guilty, Barry. Allegedly, in my humble opinion, sue me. I'd quite like you to sue me, because if you sue me, then a lot of evidence is going to come out. There's a civil suit. A lot of evidence will come out. You know, Barry's made a duff move, really. A very duff move in wanting to sue. He wants to sue the CBI, the FBI, Chaffey County. He's suing them all. It's like millions of dollars. I think it's like $15 million he's suing these organisations for wrongful imprisonment. Well, when that civil suit goes to court, if it ever does, in civil cases, you've got to provide evidence, and the other side provides the evidence. So all the evidence that they've got against you, Barry, is going to come out. Yeah, dumb.
And then she forgets to mention that she is nowhere near Colorado, never mind even in the United States. yet has the gumption to go on a public platform with this kind of performance. Then there is another creator who got himself in trouble already with his behavior around this particular case and what he put out in the public. But it appears he has not learned his lesson.
Why would an abductor take the time to go stage the bike, to put the helmet up here, up the mountain, and, to go take her 40 miles away? And I mean, they're not going to stick around and hang out and just, move everything around. They're going to try to leave as, a few possible clues as they could. So, it's just, to me, it just points more and more to Barry,
Now, I'm not going to waste any more time calling out creators because, like before, I'm likely just going to go and unsubscribe again and rather rely on local Colorado newspapers and credible people like attorney Scott Reich when it comes to this case. If you go watch my previous videos on the Suzanne Morphew case, you will hear me saying and giving Scott Reich credit for calling it the last time Barry Morphew appeared in court with regards to Suzanne Morphew's disappearance. The evidence was way too circumstantial, and pieces of other evidence were completely mishandled. It would have been a travesty had they found Barry Morphew guilty during that particular trial. As a matter of fact, it would have been a disgrace had they found him innocent. And therefore, Scott Reich called it and predicted that they were going to dismiss without prejudice. At the time, I even wondered whether the prosecutor maybe listened to Scott's channel. But never mind. The fact that they dismissed without prejudice meant that they could charge Barry Morphew again if and when they had more evidence. Clearly, they could not charge him on what they had at the time. Also, at the time, it was very clear that the DA had embarrassed herself and her office, making it even more difficult for them to recharge Barry unless or until they found the body. There are cases tried successfully on circumstantial evidence, and there are cases which had been tried successfully without bodies. But after the first fiasco, this was not going to be one of those cases. Once Barry walked out of that courtroom with his daughters, it was clear that basically only a body or a confession would bring Barry back to court. And therefore, to save face, law enforcement and the DA said that they knew where Suzanne was and that they were just waiting for the snow to thaw before retrieving her and recharging Barry. Well, obviously, that was a lie because now, a year and a half later, Suzanne's remains were discovered almost by accident because the area in which she was found was searched because of another missing woman. Now, regardless of what YouTube creators want, regardless of what they say and or how confident they are of themselves, the discovery of Suzanne's body will likely complicate the investigation even more unless law enforcement finds something, an item, or like in the Gilco killer case, a hair or something which directly points at a killer. They will now have even more complicated issues to solve. For instance, without a body, they did not have to prove manner of death. Well, it barely was a point of discussion at the time, except that everyone assumed that the tranquilizer dart had something to do with it. And I'm saying assumed because all they really found was a dart cap in the tumble dryer and the dart gun in a safe, which appeared not to have been used in a while and which was actually damaged. But of course, you can also stab someone with a dart. But because the cap was found in the dryer, I'm more inclined to think that it was likely in someone's pocket before something happened to Suzanne. I think she did the washing and put the stuff in the dryer and it fell out. It could even have fallen out a week or two before. I mean, I have found coins in the rubber seal of my front loader. One of the main issues the prosecution faced before was the unknown male DNA, which was linked to a rape case in another county and which was ultimately found on the glove box of Suzanne's vehicle. But what nobody is talking about is the unknown male DNA on the cables of the security camera equipment inside the house, which was actually mentioned during the case, but which I do not see on the arrest affidavit. But it was definitely mentioned during the case. I still have screenshots of Lauren Schaaf's tweets. And then there is the DNA found on the discarded bicycle. DNA on the bicycle seat included a mixture of Suzanne's DNA, Barry's DNA, and one CCSO responder, and then one unknown male DNA. Unfortunately for investigators, Barry is on camera. I mean, camera and sound at the scene where the bicycle was found, actually touching the seat of the bicycle. The bicycle grips provided DNA for Suzanne and Sergeant Mullinax, and Barry was excluded. DNA from the brakes and handlebars included that of Suzanne, Deputy Brown, and Deputy Himshoot. So again, unless law enforcement and the DNA are prepared to consider three police officers as suspects as well, none of the DNA can or does prove Barry guilty. However, the question as to the unknown male DNA on the glove box, the cables, and the bicycle seat remains a question mark. Interestingly, the timing of when the DNA could have been left on the items could maybe tell us something about the perp. In all three cases, the glove box, the cables, and the bicycle, we are actually talking about touch DNA, or likely to be touch DNA, because it appears we are not talking about saliva or blood. Now, DNA can hang around for a while, even when it comes to touch DNA, without interference. I mean, water or wiping or etc. Touch DNA can last up to 2 weeks outside and 6 weeks or longer inside. So the first question would be whether anyone worked on or was inside Suzanne's vehicle in the 6 weeks prior to her disappearance. And then I mean someone other than her husband and daughters. Has anyone worked on the security system in the 6 weeks prior to Suzanne's disappearance? As far as the bicycle is concerned, as the unknown male DNA was found on the seat, I'm willing to guess that those prints were left there after the last time Suzanne used her bicycle. Because if it was left before her sitting on the seat, it would likely have been wiped by the back of her pants. And as far as I'm concerned, this is further proven by the fact that Barry and the responder's DNA was found after both had been seen touching the seat at the scene. What I found very interesting about the report on DNA found on other items is the following. The dart cap in the dryer had low level partial DNA on it, that of Suzanne and a person whose name was redacted. Now keep that in mind for a minute. The dart body, or rather a dart body, was recovered from a dart box in the garage, and the low-level DNA was consistent with, again, a name redacted. Now, without doing what other creators did, but purely sticking to the facts, the only names redacted from the arrest affidavit were those of Suzanne and Barry's two daughters. So it is an easy deduction to make that the partial DNA on the cap as well as the low-level DNA on the dart body belonged to one of the daughters. This is not an effort to point fingers at anyone, but purely to state facts, and therefore either the DNA on the dart and the cap must be excluded, or one will have to consider one of the daughters as a possible suspect. Suzanne, obviously, and Barry's DNA were found inside her helmet. However, at this point, we also need to point out that Suzanne, Barry, and the girls lived in the same house, or at least at the time of Suzanne's disappearance, three of them, Barry, Suzanne, and the youngest daughter did. The eldest one was at college, but it appears as if she came home often, so finding any of their DNA on anything in and around the house is not too unexpected and could likely be explained away. But I personally do find it a little unexpected that one of the daughters' DNA was found on the cap and the dart body. But like I said, it could maybe be explained away. So, anyway, I think this is enough to digest for now. When I come back, we'll talk about the location of the remains and what that means and the timeline. So, until we meet on the next one, please take good care of yourselves and each other. Bye.